Before coming to OSU-Cascades, Dr. Hagen was at Colorado State University in Fort Collins, where he was an assistant research professor in the Department of Mechanical Engineering, and before that he was a lead research engineer at Chevron Energy Technology Company, where he was looking into novel fuels for advanced internal combustion engines. He has worked as an application engineer for Woodward Incorporated, which is a global energy system provider. So please give a nice science welcome to Chris Hagen.
So thank you, Nick. It's a hard act to follow. When I was invited quite a while ago, Nick does a good job of laying this out and getting everything straight months in advance. I thought, well, wouldn't it be fun to do some sort of theme, right? Since I'm from the mountains in theory in Bend, I thought, well, I could come as a mountain man. And in my mind, that means you've got a beard down to here, and you're wearing flannel. But it turns out, if you've ever been to Bend, Oregon, what that means is you dress like you just did a triathlon all day, every day, regardless, where you are. Anyhow, so I'm going to talk about natural gas for transportation, but my research group also does clean gasoline research, and we just got another award to do high-efficiency home generator research. So we have other things going on in our research group. I just want to point that out. One of those trivia questions for transportation, less than 2% of natural gas in this country is used for transportation. More natural gas is actually lost in the production process, just leaks out. So we have that small amount used for transportation. Also, we have an issue of capturing that, the natural gas for leaking. So, okay, just a little more background. Nick mentioned this. At the University of Wisconsin, I was doing what's called homogeneous charge compression ignition engine research by using absorption spectroscopy. I'm not going to talk about that, but I just wanted to mention to you, that's what I was doing there in Wisconsin. From there, I went to Chevron, where I worked on, again, these complex fuels for these advanced internal combustion engines. If you can claim that your gasoline is cleaner or a few % more efficient in an advanced engine, you've got a lot of money to be made. From Chevron, I went to Colorado State. There, I shifted gears a little bit. I was doing cavity ring down spectroscopy for atmospheric hydrogen chloride, parts per trillion type measurements, because it turns out that HCl could be important in the cycle of oxide of nitrogen in the atmosphere. And then that was a natural segue to Bend, Oregon. So I'm in Bend now, and we'll do an energy systems program, and I'll tell you about the research we're doing in Bend. Okay, so a little background. I was doing a presentation at the University of Fairbanks, Alaska, and I came across this slide, and I never really thought about it, but we had the age of wood in this country. And given our choice of age of wood, we choose to go back to the age of wood for energy. And then we had the age of coal here. Coal is this brown right here. Coal is tailing off. And then we had the age of oil here starting about 1950. And we see the downturn in oil. And we actually see an uptick in the green here for natural gas. And then we have our renewables and nuclear over here, rounding out the balance. When I look at the energy situation in this country, I really think about these kind of 3 E's. It's a good way to think about it. You have to address all of these. That's energy security, the environment, and the economics of it. Frankly, you have to nail all 3 of these if you're going to be successful. So, we'll talk a little bit more about the energy situation here in the United States. Talk a little more about natural gas. So, we have natural gas, you see the pipeline, but there's other types of natural gas that renewable types of natural gas we're going to be able to make better use of. And why are we hearing about natural gas? So we'll talk a little bit about that. And that pops for emphasis. So natural gas for transportation, I want to give you a little bit of a historical perspective there. And then new efforts, this is the research that we're doing in Bend. And then talk a little bit about my team and facilities, and then recap. Okay, so natural natural gas, you can see here, proven reserves are going exponential, and we'll talk a little more about that. That's thanks to not necessarily so much hydraulic fracturing as it is directional drilling. So hydraulic fracturing is actually on everybody's mind, but what's really enabled this has been directional drilling. Our petroleum reserves in this country have been declining. Because of this, we have this decoupling of the price of natural gas from petroleum, where just in the last 5 years, basically, we've had petroleum has increased and costs quite a bit per barrel, while natural gas has actually dipped. Natural gas costs about $1 a gallon of gas equivalent, $1 to $2 a gallon gas equivalent if you were able to fill your car with natural gas. So there's an opportunity there. And one other thing that really puts this in perspective for me in my career is back here in about 2002, 2003, when there was actually parity with natural gas and petroleum, or natural gas being slightly more expensive. I was out in the fields of Wyoming with the product my company had at the time called the natural gas blower that was sucking depleted wells for their natural gas, even at the price of natural gas being greater than petroleum, because it was financially feasible. So we've gone from sucking natural gas out of depleted wells down here with natural gas being unfavorable to having plenty of natural gas. Okay, so where do we get the natural gas in this country? What I like to call pipeline natural gas is from fossil origins, layered plants and animals and so on over thousands of years. Renewable natural gas is something that's fun to think about. So as a person who's on the end, I'm on the engine side of things or the power generation side of things, I try not to concern myself too often much about where the molecules come from, because basically they could be coming from a pipeline, they could be coming from renewable sources. For example, biogas, water treatment plants, landfill, livestock. This is New Belgium in Fort Collins, Colorado, where they have their own water treatment plant. It's a very green brewery, and they actually use this biogas for power generation on site. So, and then there's methane hydrates, and admittedly, I don't know a whole lot about methane hydrates other than it's methane trapped in an ice matrix, and that we have a whole heck of a lot of it off the coast of Oregon. So we have a 200-meter high formation out here, 100 kilometers off the coast of Oregon, that at the time it was estimated to have greater than 50% of the Earth's placed carbon reserves. And so when I came to Oregon, I thought, okay, what does Oregon have as far as natural gas? It turns out it doesn't produce any, so I had to look to see where I might find some natural gas. The Japanese are exploiting this. So I think there's some research here in Corvallis for methane hydrates, and I'm interested in methane hydrates. But the Japanese don't really have a choice, and they are leading the technology as far as tapping into methane hydrates. Okay, so this is from the U.S. Energy Information website, and I like to say, okay, well, here's your state of Oregon, right? And it's actually, Oregon's very fortunate. You've got a lot of hydro, you've got wind, you've got biomass, and you have very few pipelines or transmission lines. So Oregon, here in Oregon, we consume, we're 40th in consumption, which means we do a good job. We don't consume a whole heck of a lot. The production, we are 35th in energy production. Natural gas, we're 29th in natural gas production, but by the time you get to that level, you're talking about you're in the noise. We're really, you're splitting hairs here between 28 and 29. No coal, and we have 25th in electricity. And our prices are pretty fair. We have fairly cheap electricity and natural gas, which is about average. What I also like to note on this map is this line right here, which is the Ruby pipeline. A friend of mine helped build that. It's a 42-inch natural gas pipeline. And you can see how it comes down through Nevada, goes around California, hugs the border of Oregon and California until it gets here. so that El Paso, which is now Kinder Morgan, can pass it off to Williams Gas Pipeline. It becomes their head when it goes to California. So there's a lot going on there with regulatory and financial situation. So this is Oregon. I want to contrast that. Oh, and by the way, I just toured the Arlington landfill, which is up here in my pointers. Up here between Biggs Junction and Hermiston, where they do a lot of landfill gas power generation and they do gasification. They get all the trash from Seattle. They take it, they let it decompose, they do power generation with it, and then they sell electricity back to Seattle for their renewable credits. And so it's a pretty ingenious situation and a great tour to get a chance to go on. Okay, so I'm not from Oregon, so this map was a little bit of a shock to me, and I'm more used to something like this. So this is Pennsylvania, and these are all surface operations for coal or natural gas, oil and gas. It's hard to find a wind turbine in here, but you can see the pipelines too. So there's a lot going on in other parts of the country. We're very fortunate here to have a lot of hydro, but to look, at the country, there's a lot going on. And this is some of the Marcellus Shale, which we'll talk a little bit about. But the point here is that other countries have a lot going on as far as exploiting natural resources. Okay, so natural gas in the news. So why have we been talking about it for years? Why is it in the paper every other day? Well, these are shale gas plays in North America. And if you would look at this plot just last year, it would have been a lot more empty than this one is right now. So in the past, when I was working on the pipeline, we were trying to get gas from the Gulf of Mexico up here to the population centers of the Northeast. You can see what happens when you find this giant Marcellus shale right there next to the population center. So they were building new pipelines to take the gas from the Gulf or the Rockies to get it over here to the Northeast where prices were favorable. Well, with the Marcellus shale, it turns out, with the most recent information I have, some of those pipelines are looking at reversing because there's so much gas here in the Marcellus shale that these guys up here in the Northeast no longer need it, and they might try to send it back somewhere in the middle of the country. So the Barnett, Eagle Ford, and some of the Colorado, Wyoming shale plays have really been exploited because they already had the ability there, they were already drilling there. So these guys went first. And then the Marcellus shale is strategically positioned. Some of the news stories you're hearing is the Bakken up here in North Dakota. It really is the Wild West. I just recently saw a talk where people at McDonald's make $20+ an hour because that's the only way they can get people to work at McDonald's. I have a little bit of a Clint Eastwood good, bad, and ugly theme in some of my other slides. So this is, to tie that in, this is the Wild West right here. So that's an interesting one to follow. But also here, even more interesting to me is the Monterey Shale. So they still don't know how big it is, but it promises to be quite defined. But California is going to really have to struggle with do they want to exploit that, or are they going to leave it alone? And I don't know the latest on that, but that is one of the more recent developments there in the Monterey. So that's why you hear a lot about natural gas, that and the method for getting it, the hydraulic fracturing and directional drilling.
Chris, what's the difference between a play and a basin?
I don't know, I'm not an exploration person. Yeah, that's a jargon I use. Okay, so the good, bad, and the ugly for this natural gas situation. So what I consider to be the good is if you have gasoline, which mechanical engineers model as 2,2,4-trimethylpentane, which is the closest single molecule we can get to behave like gasoline. You have a low heating value of 44.3 megajoules per kilogram. This is the stoichiometric equation, but what I want you to look at is you have 9 waters to every 8 CO2 molecules for 1 mole of, for 1 per molecule of fuel. And the hydrogen to carbon ratio is 2.25. Okay, so natural gas, which is modeled as methane generally, because it's mostly methane, 85 to 95% methane. has 50 megajoules per kilogram. So that heating value on a mass basis, which some of you got right in the trivia, is higher for methane than it is for natural gas. It's higher for natural gas than it is for gasoline. But the stoichiometric equation here has 2 waters for every 1 CO2, and it has a hydrogen to carbon ratio of 4. So basically you have a fuel here that has more energy per unit mass, that produces less CO2, significantly less CO2. So one would think, okay, well this is great. If you have to make a transition from a purely liquid hydrocarbon basis, and you're stepping towards a lower greenhouse gas situation, natural gas is not a bad intermediate step. So this became apparent to me when I saw Robert Kennedy Jr. talking at the Colorado Oil and Gas Show back in 2010. So he's an environmental lawyer. He came to talk to the other side, which was the oil and gas people, to say, hey, listen, we're doing all these renewable fuels installations, but the wind doesn't always blow and the sun doesn't always shine. But we want to have base load type technology. And so they're going to use natural gas. Natural gas is a natural fit to smooth out the transients for the wind farms and the solar installations. So to me, this showed that there was a good way for everybody to work together with natural gas. One of the downsides is that methane has a global warming potential of 23 times or higher than CO2. And that's all dependent upon what kind of lifetime you look at, the lifetime of the molecules over what time you're going to look at, and the spectral absorption for the different molecules. But anyhow, if you let that methane leak out, it's actually not helping us as much as we would hope. Okay, the bad. Hydraulic fracturing and horizontal drilling. So this is the drilling situation for natural gas. Before we did conventional drilling, which was we drilled down a little bit, it was right there, a big pocket, we got a bunch of it, it was easy, and everybody was happy. So now we're going down much, much deeper, and we're doing the directional drilling. So we're getting down here in these tight sands and gaseous shales, and we're fracturing these formations. I'm not a geologist, so I apologize if there are geologists here. But we get on here, we fracture this, and then the natural gas seeps out. Here's some of the gory details. So I've been out in the field, I've seen this, but I also I recognize enough that I'm far from expert on this subject. I've seen it. They're big operations, but I thought it would make sense to just walk you through it a little bit as far as I understand it. You have roughly 200 tankers of water coming in for the fracturing process. You pump it down there with a pump truck. You have millions of gallons going down there, and basically with hydraulic pressure in a perforated well bore, you hydraulically crack the rock around it. And your water has the sand in it and some chemicals. The chemicals are for antifungal, they're for viscosity and so on. It's a cocktail of chemicals in there, and the parts per million, as I understand it. You fracture the rock, you prop it open with the sand grains, and then the gas comes back out, it has to produce water. A lot of the controversy has to do with this cocktail of chemicals, and I don't really closely follow the legal situation, but for drilling companies, they want to keep that as intellectual property. So if I can come to you and say, well, I have like the right mixture to put down this hole, and I can produce a lot more out of your well, you're going to want to come to me. And so that's why people have held those chemical mixtures very tight. I think some states, like Colorado, require you to disclose what's in your fracking fluid. Anyhow, the natural gas comes out, but then you get this produced water. And this is one thing that I think is kind of convenient, that it just gets trucked off and goes somewhere, or stored. There's a lot of water, there's millions of gallons of water that just gets treated, and I'm still trying to fill in the gap there on the treatment. I've seen these ponds, but I just want to hear the rest of the story on the water, because we all know water in so many ways is integral to energy going forward, and it's really important in these fracturing processes. Okay, so one more thing about fracking and horizontal drilling. What it's allowed us to do, so fracking's been around for decades. Some people say the 1940s. And so there's nothing new about it. We're just exploiting it, and we're getting a lot more gas from it. The horizontal drilling, they can come down now and go out 5 miles horizontal in one direction. And so the university, one of the universities in Texas branch campuses has drilled 22 wells from one pad using horizontal drilling on campus and accessed 1,100 acres for natural gas. And if you've ever been to these natural gas or oil and gas operations, there's roads everywhere, there's pads everywhere, and the ability to sit on one pad and drill all around you drastically reduces the environmental impact. So what's the ugly? Okay, so this is about 5 miles from where I lived in Fort Collins. So I can sit here in Oregon or Bend, Oregon and say, well, that's Texas's problem or that's Oklahoma's problem, it'll never happen anywhere near me. Well, here's a well gone wrong right on I-25 in northern Colorado. Like I said, 5 miles from my old home. And so this is just an example of things do go wrong. I think they contained it largely. I mean, it would have been a huge PR problem. It makes you wonder what would have happened in the middle of Wyoming. It would have gotten so much attention. Seems doubtful. But it does happen. And so that one hit kind of close to home. And then there's the documentaries, Gasland. Haven't watched them. And I haven't watched this one. I haven't watched the rebuttal documentary to it either. I'm actually too busy out doing research. But the premise there is that hydraulic fracturing is causing people's water to light on fire and contaminating groundwater. It's a really hard situation to follow. And I feel like as you get bigger companies involved, more skins in the game, and the EPA gets involved, and we get better methods that we're going to be a little more comfortable with that. Okay, so that's the background. On to what we're doing here at Oregon State. The Department of Energy recognized this opportunity. I don't know if you're familiar with, there's a branch of the Department of Energy called the Advanced Research Project Agency for Energy. And it's ARPA-E, and it's patterned after DARPA. And they basically more closely manage the projects, smaller projects, more closely managed, and they have a big commercialization component of it. But they saw this massive increase in natural gas and said, we have this unprecedented opportunity for economic gain in this country. If we can exploit that, again, for security and environmental benefit. The state-of-the-art prior to this program was what's called the fuel maker fill. So you could buy this little compressor, put it in your garage, okay, and fill your car at home with natural gas. We didn't have the favorable price differences when the fill was being produced. And on top of the premium you paid for a natural gas vehicle, now you're paying an extra $5,000 to $8,000 to install this compressor at home, and then it takes 8 hours to fill your car. So, and on top of that, there were some mechanical issues, the reliability issues with the fill, as I understand it. So, ARPA-E created this program called MOVE, Methane Opportunities for Vehicular Energy, where they funded 13 projects, and they wanted to attack home compression. So we all have cheap natural gas at home. So if we can do home compression, we remove the whole infrastructure issue with the natural gas. We want to have better tanks. So if we can do conformable tanks, so it can be in any shape, so now your car has more flexibility, you don't have to have cylindrical tanks. And then if we can do absorbents, so if we can have higher density storage on our vehicle without having to go to high pressure, because the pressure basically is a big challenge. So those are the three areas where the Department of Energy funded research. And you can see they're pretty big players. We have Gas Technology Institute, Ford, UTRC, GE. So we're down here in the home compression section, where we had a $700,000 award. I won a $7,000 award for this research to retrofit an engine to do its own compression, and I'll explain more of that later. But we're competing with the likes of Eaton, GE Global. Since this $700,000, because of our performance in the first year, ARPA-E awarded me another $300,000 because of our performance. And then, because of our performance in the second year, they are in negotiations with my company. They actually are flying up to Bend tomorrow to meet with us to do a much bigger support of our program. So we're going to get bumped up again a significant amount because they're so happy with really what the progress that my students and the research my research group has made. So down here we're playing with some of the big boys and working on natural gas compression at home. And ARPA-E, this is the picture of Bill Gates. And they have an energy summit every year, and he was there the year before I started, and then we had Elon Musk and T. Boone Pickens. It's a pretty big deal. We go there. This year we had a very big presence there in Washington, D.C. to show all the work we've been doing in Bend. Okay, so before we get to my project, we'll give a little more background. Natural gas transportation. So it's got quite a long history, right? So this is your natural gas tank. So we have low pressure, people are trying to make it work, right? But now the tank technology actually is very important. So here we have T. Boone Pickens and the bushes in T. Boone Pickens' backyard. Is that Tony Bennett? I don't know, I was trying to figure that out. And we have back here is the fuel maker home compressor. So the earlier version of what I was showing you, and T. Boone is obviously trying to convince everybody here that they should be home refueling. This is back in 1992. So T. Boone's been at it for a while. Other historical natural gas vehicles. Well, this right here is a syngas vehicle with a coal gasifier. So the chemists and chemical engineers in the room will know that Fischer-Tropsch has been around since World War II, where you can gasify the coal and make syngas. And what I think is fun about some of these tow-behind gasification systems is that syngas is CO and hydrogen. So if the hydrogen isn't blowing to you, the CO is going to. So it really wasn't, that desirable. We have another gasification, actually this one's in the car. But then we have our low pressure storage here with the big vehicle with the big gas bag on top. 1939 we get a little more sophisticated. We're now using gas cylinders here, and the technology has continued to get better and better. It's just a fun historical perspective, right? This is not new. Very few of these things are actually novel, but people have been trying to do it for a while. So in this same talk, Dr. Sizzler had this slide. This is from one of the ARPA-E annual meetings I was at. And I think this is a great slide. It really does a good job of explaining what it takes, I think, to roll out an unconventional fuel. You really need to have the foundation in the economics. Without the economics, it just doesn't work. You need to have the uprights here, vehicle technology. So prior to this program, Honda had the Civic full-time natural gas vehicle. So we have vehicles that have the technology to run on natural gas. It's actually not that difficult to convert a vehicle from spark-ignited gasoline to natural gas or diesel, which we don't. So the technology exists, and there's more and more vehicles coming out that run on natural gas or biofuel. Infrastructure. This is the issue we're trying to attack. There are 600 natural gas fueling stations in the United States versus 150,000 gasoline stations. Okay, and there's something like tens of millions of homes with natural gas, and natural gas is cheap. So right now, the infrastructure is the issue. How are you going to get that fuel into the vehicle? And once we get those squared away, then it is the standards, the regulations, and the law that make it all happen. And that takes a while. We've never been involved in any of that. Okay, so who are we and what are we doing? So this is only a part of my team. There in Bend, it's usually pretty sunny, it's a little springy, but we have an undergrad. This is somebody who works with us. We've got graduate students. We're the project lead. We have an engineering company helping Colorado State with a small sub-award. And then this is our spin-off company, Onboard Dynamics, that's commercializing the technology. In a nutshell, we are taking an internal combustion engine and making it into a dual function engine. one of the cylinders of the engine has two sets of valves. One set of valves are the normal intake exhaust valves, and we can deactivate those valves and turn them off. We have another set of valves we can turn on that cylinder. And that cylinder can behave either as a natural gas compressor, or when we switch it back on to combustion, that cylinder switches to combustion. So we're driving the compressor, we're making the engine the compressor, and it behaves as a normal engine. And I'll show some more detailed pictures. But the whole idea was to say, okay, well, why don't we take advantage of what's under the hood, which actually already looks like a compressor, and use it for compressing natural gas. So we have this dual mode engine, and then we actually, since it's much bigger than that home compressor I showed you, we actually have an opportunity to flow quite a bit of gas, an order of magnitude more than that little compressor we were showing you, and then we claim we can do it a lot cheaper. Another fun feature of this dual mode engine compressor is that the compressor travels with you. So if you have that tap at your house, and I have that tap at my house, I can go to your house and fill my vehicle. And you can go to my house and fill the vehicle, because your compressor is with you. So that's another big benefit. And we say it's going to last forever and weigh nothing. So, a little bit more close-up of this dual mode concept. This is a very early stage schematic, very early stage. But basically, I want to turn these two valves off. I want to figure out a way to get gas in there, and I'm going to do it in multiple stages. So I have to go through the engine multiple times. So I have staging tanks. I do some rejection of heat, compression, and so on. And eventually, I fill my tank. For those of you who are interested in engines, our base engine is a 5.9 liter Cummins diesel engine. So if you're interested in pressure, natural gas is stored at 250 atmospheres. That's what the standard is for the United States. That's 3,600 psi. And so if you know much about engines, your gasoline engine that you drove here with is probably good to about 50 atmospheres. And we're trying to get to 250 atmospheres. So if we try to do this with your vehicle, we can blow it up just by pressure. So this Cummins 5.9 liter diesel engine is actually the most bomb-proof, hot-rodded engine that we could find out there and get our hands on. And so this was strategic in that we could find aftermarket components, pressure operate this engine to get to these natural gas compression pressures without having a catastrophic failure. Okay, so here's what we're doing. This is the test cell and then I have a little clearer picture later on where there's my group running this engine that I've been describing to you. We have all the necessary controls and blinking and flashing lights. We've taken this natural gas engine, on top of putting new valves in it, we have changed it from a diesel compression ignition engine with a pressure ratio of 17 to 1 and 12 valves to a spark-ignited natural gas engine, lower compression ratio. We've added 2 extra valves. So these 2 additional valves are shown right here in this cartoon. So you have your intake and exhaust valves. We're looking at the bottom of the cylinder head. This is a piston. We're looking up from the bottom. I can deactivate. We have a custom cylinder deactivation. We can turn these 2 valves off and open these 2 valves and start pumping natural gas. And then when I'm in commute mode, that same cylinder, these compressor valves close and reactivate these, and this cylinder combusts as normal. So a slightly, a much better rendering. And I realize that we look at this enough that I just want to make sure that you understand what you're looking at here. This is the top of the engine with the new, more angry beaver here. And we milled into the top, fancy Oregon State stuff in my lab name there. So this is another perspective looking at the top, and this is the cylinder head of the engine. We have the intake and exhaust valve in here. These are the 2 compressor valves that we can open up. And once those are open, they access these custom check valves here. We pump gas in and out through that cylinder, through this path here with that engine. Breakthroughs were, like I said, we found an engine that we could get the full CAD solid model of this head, which is a big deal. If you ever tried to deal with automotive companies, this is a special sauce. They won't share it with you. So we had to go out and buy it and found it, and it was worked out really well. So we have the 2 new valves, new compressor valves. We put in what's called a fire ring, which is a really heavy-duty head gasket that actually cuts into the head. so we don't blow the head off. Other hot rodding type things, I'm actually not really a hot rodder. But so we've done this kind of full rebuild of the engine. So what's amazing is I've done this all on my own, and I take full credit. So in reality, this is our first ESC graduate painting the test cell. And this is just another small part of the group. These guys have worked really hard. Robert got his BS mechanical engineering here in Corvallis. I rotate my students between Bend and Corvallis, my graduate students. They basically do their graduate classes here, grade all my classes here, and then they come to Bend. And they really don't do, they aren't skiing like you might think, right? They actually do quite a bit of work. And Zach is going to be, he's my next new graduate student. Josh is moving on, and a lot of the people aren't pictured here. So this is our engine. I'm touching the check valves. The picture we saw before was a cutaway about this section here. And if you've ever tried to build a facility like this, we've built this in a year and a half with students. And that's just simply incredible to me. We have a lot of safety sensitive type devices here. We have a 125 horsepower electric motor with a variable frequency drive that we're using to drive this engine. So most of the time we're just doing compression experiments. So we don't need to do combustion. So we're just using an electric motor to drive the engine and do the experiments. But we have done combustion and so on. So these guys have worked really hard, and they're the reason we're having all this good luck with the awards. We're also co-located with the Central Oregon Community College automotive program. So you can imagine we have 6 auto bays, all these type of guys, and all the tools and all their knowledge to help us with the convention side of the operations. Central Oregon Community College has actually been a great partner. One other illustration that I did, I'm not doing this on my own. This is my lab, and this is the chart just for this one project. I have a postdoc that's not mentioned here. I have an undergraduate student that's not mentioned here, but I'm managing all these students, and a part-time engineer and technician are helping with this, and we have some capstone students. And we have another engineering company that I'm managing, Colorado State sub-award that I'm managing. And then this is the spin-off company here, Onboard Dynamics. We're hoping to see some big news soon from that company. There's the CEO, Rita Hansen. We've got a great VP of business development. There's the CTO, me, CFO, and then the marketing specialist, and the kind of whispering around the offices, there's something's going on between these two. Marketing specialist and the CTO, but I can neither confirm or deny that. So this is Onboard Dynamics. I have one slide here. If you're interested, there's the website. The spin-off has been supported by the OSU Office of Corporate Development, Office of Commercialization and Corporate Development, OSU Accelerator, or Venture Accelerator. And this is our CEO, Rita Hansen, at the ARPA-E Energy Summit in Washington, D.C. We were selected from hundreds of companies to do this business competition, business plan competition. And she's up here with a bunch of pretty darn serious VCs. We have like Shell Energy, we've got GE here, this is a serious group. I think we ended up placing 4th. But this is in front of thousands of people. We're up there representing Oregon State and the project and the spin-off company. So that's been very exciting. Okay, so the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? I mean, the good is there are some opportunities with natural gas, greenhouse gas angles. The bad is the hydraulic fracturing and the uglies. Well, we do have a surplus of natural gas here in the United States. Really, it's due to these advanced drilling techniques. Not so much hydraulic fracturing as the horizontal drilling. We'd like to see more use for transportation. Like I said, we're actually losing more natural gas than we're using for transportation. We're doing quite a bit of work there at OSU-Cascades and Bend. The work has been supported by the ARPA-E, OSU Venture Development Fund, which is the Office of Commercialization Corporate Development. OSU-Cascades has provided matching funds. So I'd like to kind of finish here with this picture of Bend, this cartoon. And if you follow anything about Bend, we're trying to pick a place for a campus, which I think is somewhere right over here. Right now, we're kind of split. We have this artist rendering of what we're going to look like and who we're going to be.